Our speaker today is Kevin Corley, and Kevin is a faculty member at Arizona State University. Kevin did his graduate work at Penn State, was on the faculty at the University of Illinois for a while, has been at Arizona State since 2005, also did a stint at the IB Business School in Madrid, Spain. Kevin has published in all of the Academy journals, the Annals, AMR, AMJ, also published in Org Science, Research and OB, Journal of Management. He may be perhaps most well known for a paper in 2004 that was published in ASQ, which subsequently received the 2010 ASQ Award for Scholarly Contribution. Kevin's been involved in the area of research methods over the time of his career, including publishing an article in Organizational Research Methods on rigor and qualitative research that will be the focus of his presentation today. Kevin is on the advisory board at Harvard Business Review, the editorial review boards, historically at AMJ, AMR, and the British Journal of Management. Most recently, he is just cycling out of a 3-year term as the editor of the Academy of Management Journal. And one of the things that makes it extra special to welcome Kevin to CARMA is it's actually welcoming Kevin back to CARMA because Kevin participated in one of our early events, many conferences we used to run when he was a graduate student at Penn State. So it's a real honor to have such a distinguished scholar and editor joining us to get things going. So please join me in welcoming Kevin Corley.
Yep. Good to be here. Thanks for those of you who are here in the room today, and thanks to all of you who are joining us online. And a special shout out to those of you in Tempe. Go Sun Devils. As Larry said, what I want to talk to you about today has to do with the notion of rigor in qualitative research. And it's something that is kind of near and dear to my heart because for the past several years now, as Larry said, I've been an editor, associate editor at AMJ, focused specifically on qualitative research. And one of the things that I have seen and noticed in dealing with all the papers that have been submitted that I've dealt with and the reviews that I've read to help me write my decision letters is that when it comes down to judging the quality of qualitative research, one of the things that reviewers are most concerned about is how rigorous were the methods that were used to go from raw data to this end result of an emergent model that is in the paper that this author or authors are trying to publish. Okay? And that's quite an important thing for us to consider. It's something that all scholars have to deal with, but from the particular perspective of qualitative research, to understand how we go from the raw data, bring it in, begin to interpret it, code it, understand it, and allow that to inform us about something unique, something novel about that phenomenon that we don't yet understand. Produce a model, and then try to sell that to a set of reviewers and an editor in the hope of getting it published. It can be quite a challenge. And so what I want to talk about today is some basic tenets, components of that process, as well as a very particular approach that myself and Denny Joya and many of his other students have developed over the years that we've found to be very helpful for us in helping our reader understand what it is that we did, why the end result is plausible, and how it actually leads us to understand an organizational phenomenon in a different way. Okay? So our focus today, as I said, is going to be on inductive research. These are phenomenon of interest that are socially constructed. Okay? I am a social constructionist. I take a very interpretivist view of the world that feeds directly into the type of methods that we're going to be talking about today. I am interested in talking to those folks who are living the experience, who are living this phenomenon. Okay? For me, it's not enough to sit in my office and to theorize about what might be going on in organizations. I actually want to interact with the people who are living that phenomenon. Okay? It's also important in this process to recognize that we're distinguishing between my views as a researcher and the views of the informant. Okay? So one of the things that we're going to talk about when it gets in terms of qualitative rigor is really separating out the words, the voice, the interpretations of those informants that we're relying on for our data versus those words and interpretations and perspective of us, the researcher, who's trying to translate those experiences into theory. Okay? Most often, this approach is kind of follows a grounded theory approach. Okay? And I thought it might be useful for us just to make sure that we're all on the same page for a second, to kind of step through a very typical, kind of a generalized grounded theory approach, make sure that we all understand what it is that I'm talking about before we dive into the process of looking at rigor. Okay? So the way I like to think about this is, in terms of conducting a grounded theory approach, we start with a phenomenon of interest. Okay? There is some aspect of organizations that we are interested in understanding better. Okay? And we're going to locate that phenomenon within a particular research context. Hopefully it's a context that will allow us access to that phenomenon. Because a lot of the stuff that we study as grounded theorists are not obvious. Okay? So for instance, Larry referred to the 2004 ASQ piece. I was interested in identity change, organizational identity change. That's a hard phenomenon to capture in just everyday general life of an organization. I had to choose the right context. In my case, it was a spin-off, an organization being spun off, such that this phenomenon that I was interested in came to life. And the informants that I was relying on to tell me about the phenomenon, it was actually real for them. They were experiencing it at that moment. They could talk about it. Okay? Out of that combination is going to come a set of research questions. Okay? And it's these research questions that really guide the inductive researcher through the data collection and analysis project. Okay? And as many methodologists have talked about before me, several here at Karma, research questions from an inductive standpoint are best when framed in a how question or a why question. So how does this work? Why does this work this way? Why do you do what you do? How do you do what you do? Okay? So these three components are the foundation of any grounded theory study. Phenomenon of interest, research context, guiding research questions, hopefully all working together to help push you, the scholar, in the right direction in terms of building theory on this phenomenon. Okay? Once we've got those research questions, we've got a focus on the phenomenon, we've got our context, and we're actually engaging with that context, we're going to start collecting data. Okay? I'm not going to talk about this today, but lots of different ways to collect qualitative data. The most obvious and the most used, I think, involves interviews. People who are going out, conducting, whether they're open-ended interviews, semi-structured interviews, engaging people, talking to those who are living the experience. Okay? That will feed back into your research questions. Okay? As grounded theorists, we're open to the possibility that as we engage those living the phenomenon, they may help us see that how we originally framed our research question was not really how, it's not important to them, right? It's not how they see the world. And so you have to be open to possibly refining your research question a bit. Okay? Because again, if you're relying on these informants to help you build theory on this phenomenon, you need to be open to them telling you something that you weren't expecting, right? Or that we were not prepared for based upon current theory. Once we've got that research question set, we continue with more data collection, and we find ourselves in a kind of a reciprocal process of data collection and data analysis. Right? We are interviewing informants, we are observing them in action, we're observing social interactions, okay? We're gathering documentation. But the whole time that we're collecting this data, we're also analyzing it. Okay? We're diving into it, we're coding it, we're trying to look for common themes, We might be doing some cross-case comparisons between our different informants. People in this group of the organization say this, but people over here, they seem to just have a different perspective on this, right? And that analysis that you do is actually going to feed back to help you collect your future data. So again, as a grounded theorist, you have to be open to the potential of your protocol, your interview protocol, changing. You might need to ask different questions as you come to understand this phenomenon in a better way. Okay? So we'll follow this reciprocal loop for a while, collection, analysis, until we reach a point that we refer to as theoretical saturation. This is a point where we feel that even though we can continue collecting new data, we're not learning anything new about the phenomenon. Right? We're not getting anywhere closer to answering those guiding research questions. We've learned everything that we need to know from these folks to answer these research questions. And we call it a point of theoretical saturation. It's much fuzzier than that. And that's a struggle that grounded theorists have sometimes, is understanding when they've reached that point of theoretical saturation. But at some point, you have to stop collecting and analyzing. You can't go on forever. And when you've gotten to that point, a big question that is for grounded theorists is, how do I arrange my data? How can I collect my data in such a way that I can present it so it makes sense to an audience of people who did not have the same experience in the field that I did? So late in the stage, data presentation becomes very important. And as we'll talk about later today, things that you do early in the process and things that you do in that collection and analysis loop will actually help facilitate your presentation of data later. It's not good enough to start thinking about data presentation when you actually need to present it. Obviously, coming off data presentation is the final write-up of the paper. It doesn't do us any good to collect this data, analyze it, to develop emergent theory, and then not share it with others. Right? And the best way we can do that is through presentations and journal articles. And luckily, we get rewarded for writing good journal articles. So there's a nice incentive there for us to do this. But ultimately, we have to work towards that final write-up, okay? And taking what we've come to understand about this phenomenon and sharing it with others. Okay? So this is a general process that underlies what we're going to be talking about today. There are other approaches to qualitative research. There are other approaches that are not as interpretivistic. There are other approaches that are just as interpretivistic but don't necessarily follow this pattern. But in general, this is a good process model for us to look at as we talk about this notion of rigor and the particular approach that I'm going to share with you today. Okay? We're going to focus most of our attention on that part of the process that involves the data collection, the analysis, and presentation. Okay? As I'll explain, really you have to be thinking about the notion of rigor throughout this entire process. But rigor really comes into play in this middle part of the process. And so that's where we're going to spend our time today talking about. Okay?